All right. Good evening, everyone. And we welcome you this Thursday evening for our Parent Academy webinar session. Thank you for joining us. And again, we are excited to have you as audience listeners and participants. I am Tina Folston Hayes, the Parent Academy Specialist for Educational Equity and Outreach for the Alachua County Public Schools. And I welcome you this evening. Tonight, we will receive some helpful information from our guest speaker, Ms. Christie, from parentguidance.org. And just before we begin, I would like to go over a few housekeeping elements. Please keep your microphones on mute through the duration of the presentation. We will monitor your questions and respond accordingly. Please use your Q&A feature located at the bottom of the webinar window. And please note that all Parent Academy webinars are closed captioned, recorded, and posted to our website for access at a later date or for re-review for any individuals who could not join us live tonight. Your questions will be answered at the conclusion of each session. If there is a specific need for any personal conversation, the Parent Academy's email address is parentacademy@gm.sbac.edu. And we will get to those questions and your request for additional information forwarded to the correct Alachua County Public School staff or community member. And now, without further ado, I present to you our guest speaker, Ms. Christie. Hello, and thank you for joining us.
Yes, hello, Tina. Thank you. I'm sad that this is our last session together this year.
I know, myself as well.
Yeah. Well, tonight we have a great topic for y'all. We are talking about social media and how we can protect our children with social media, especially going into the summer as our teens and young ones will want to spend more time on their devices. So this is a good one to do right before we jump into the summer. So, all right, everybody. Well, what we'd like you to do is go to menti.com and you can either open up your browser and go to menti.com and type in code 8396-8962, or use your phone to take a shot of that QR code. It will take you right to where you want to be. If you are old fashioned, sometimes like me, I like to have an old fashioned notebook and a pen in case you want to take some notes. But remember, when we share with each other in Menti, it's completely anonymous. So all the phone lines are muted. There's no videos that are on. So this is a good way for us to learn from not only our parentguidance.org faculty members, but also myself, but also each other. So thank you so much for coming. As soon as you get into Menti, if you'll give me that thumbs up or press that heart button, that means I know that you're in and ready to go. And for those who are watching this webinar back, thank you for being here. And as we go through the interactive portions, that'll be just a time for you to kind of reflect and pause to answer those questions, and then you can move forward. So tonight we are talking about social media protecting your children. My name is Christy Wiley. I'm your facilitator this evening, and I'd like to thank Dr. Edwards for bringing parentguidance.org into your community and planning for these discussions to help you help your children. So as we start out, we always like to start out by finding out more about you. So tell me, what age are your children? Do you have elementary, middle school, high school, maybe some older children in the house as well? And while you're doing that, a little bit about me. I'm a mental health advocate. I'm a suicide loss survivor. I lost my father to suicide. I myself struggle with depression and anxiety, and I am a single mommy to a beautiful and wonderful young lady whose last day of 6th grade was today. So we now have a 7th grader on our hands. So I am a middle school mommy, and looks like y'all joining here tonight are middle school parents as well. So we're all in it together. So let's get started. Teenage cell phone use statistics showed that around 45% of teenagers constantly check their phones and confess feelings of addiction to their electronic devices. Did you know that 92% of teens have access to a smartphone? And 52% of American teens admit that they would like to take some steps to cut back on their use of smartphones. So that's the good news. But we also found that 56% of American teenagers feel anxious or even lonely when they don't have their smartphone. Plus, teenage cell phone addiction statistics show that girls are more likely to display these unpleasant cell phone addiction symptoms than boys. And 57% of American parents attempt to set screen time restrictions for their teens. So in Menti, tell me, what are the biggest concerns for you when it comes around technology use and your child? What are a few things that maybe you have in mind that you're hoping to learn tonight? Or what motivated you to register for tonight's session or even come back and watch this webinar? Are you concerned about the amount of time your child spends on their devices or maybe the content that they're viewing? I know that those have all been and continue to be concerns of mine. And so one of you says, yeah, safe social media practices. Exactly. It's like, how can we be safe, and how can, as parents, how can we teach digital citizenship? And that's what we're going to be learning tonight. And how much should we expect from our child when it comes to regulating themselves and their devices? How do we establish those guidelines around usage? So we're going to discuss and learn from each other as we share, but also Dr. Kevin Skinner, who is our parentguidance.org clinical director. He's a licensed marriage and family therapist, and he's put together our coursework for this evening. So a rundown of what we're going to be learning today. We're going to be learning guidelines for effective parenting. We're going to learn some truths about devices and how to develop more device awareness, including some real talk about some of the apps out there. We're also going to see what you know and don't know about social media. And you're going to leave here with some new insight and motivation to strengthen your ability to protect your child. But before we can get into social media, we have to learn these guidelines for effective parenting. And Dr. Skinner teaches 3 core components of effective parenting that leads to good outcomes in children. And these are important to know because this is the foundation of effective parenting. So the 3 things, and these are 3 things you may want to write down in your notes. What we're going to talk about when it comes to effective parenting is parental warmth. So that's the warm feeling we give to our children through our words and our actions. That we want to monitor our child's behavior. You know, there's this fine line between manipulation and control, and then monitoring because we love and care about you. Now, that may still in their mind's eye look like control, but what we know as parents is we're trying to love you and teach you and keep you safe. Also, do we know where our kids are? Do we know who their friends are? Do we know how they're spending their money? You know, these are all things that we need to know. And then the difference is emphasized in Dr. Skinner's Parenting Styles course, which emphasizes the importance of not playing mind games with your child, avoiding that psychological control where you're using manipulative tactics to control them. And that could be things like bringing up past mistakes or emphasizing their weaknesses. Okay, so let's listen now to Dr. Skinner as he explains more on how to parent effectively.
Now, this is the effectiveness of what we would say good parenting can be. Now, I don't know about you guys, but for me personally, this is something that I've had to work on, staying engaged when it's so easy to go home from a long day's work and tune out. Our children also might be doing the same thing after a difficult day at school or with their friends. As parents, we need to stay engaged and involved, monitoring what's going on. I find that it's actually a little bit easier for me to just push it along. I'll check tomorrow, I'll talk with them tomorrow. And really, what we're looking for here is trying to maintain it, that awareness of what's happening in their lives, not only at school, but on their screens, and being aware. So this is kind of what I'm saying is the foundation. We need to be aware and we need to be involved. So concept number one, understand, are their basic needs being met, and are we staying involved in their lives in a way that we're communicating with them regularly, that we're monitoring their behaviors, and we're giving them the warmth and the connection that they long for and they desire. So this is kind of the foundation of what everything else I'm going to be talking about in this course. Let's start there, because if those things aren't happening, everything else I talk about after this is not going to be effective. You can try to monitor your child's screen time, but if they don't feel connection, if they don't feel like you care, if they don't feel like you're involved in a loving way, they're not going to listen. They're going to feel like you're controlling, they're going to resist you, they're going to fight back, they're going to swear, cuss, whatever, because you're taking away their comfort. Does that concept make sense? If you take away what they're connecting to and don't have an alternative, they're going to resist it. So the foundation of a good relationship is imperative for success in our parenting roles.
Okay. So how is your connection with your child? Some children are easier to connect with than others, but make sure you take the time to focus on the needs of each child. Many of you have, one, two, or two, three, four children in the house. So it's time, we have to think about how do we connect with each individual child. So what is the truth about devices? We need them. We've come to rely on them for many things. But when we provide devices to our children, what do we need to know? So let's see what Dr. Skinner has to say.
As parents, we can't protect our children from everything that they're going to be exposed to. But sometimes we think we may be monitoring what's actually happening, and in reality, we're not doing that. So as we think about our homes, we think about the devices in our homes, is there any monitoring? Is there anything that measures or looks at or explores what websites are being visited? As a parent, we have to be very conscientious and aware of what's happening on our children's screens. Are they being bullied? Are they experiencing criticism? What apps have they downloaded? These are all questions that, as parents, we need to have device awareness. As hard as it is, as parents, we can help our children by showing that we care. I know one father who said, look, just so you know, when I give you this phone, smartphone, that everything that happens on it, we're going to be aware. It has a filter because we want to protect you. Before giving their child a device, they had clear boundaries and expectations of what that phone could have and could not have. Certain apps the children were not allowed to have on their phones until they got older and could understand and have more communication. So it was step by step, giving them more and more freedom and letting them govern themselves as they got older and show that they could discipline themselves. One more point here. We now know that the more screen time has been directly related to emotional challenges like anxiety and depression. So increase in screen time, smartphone use, can trigger an increase in mental health issues like anxiety and depression. One study was absolutely fascinating on this, and it found that the more time children spent on like Facebook, like this, like that, looking to how many likes do I have, the more depressed they were. Now, again, this is just information for you as a parent to be aware of. You're going to want to educate your child on these issues with anxiety, with depression, so they understand what this device is used for and also that there's going to be limitations. This is a foundational part of being aware and involved in our children's lives.
So be aware and involved in your child's life, monitor their devices and set clear boundaries. And I love this metaphor that we're going to use throughout this, but I had never thought about it this way. But when our child turns 16, we don't just throw them the car keys and say, go have at it, have fun driving, right? We teach them, we practice, we increase their independence, So first we're going to drive in the parking lot. And once we do that, we'll graduate to the street and in our neighborhood. Then we graduate to here. So, just like we wouldn't just hand our teenager the keys and say, figure it out, we need to teach them gradually, increase their independence and responsibility one step at a time as we monitor. And we need to pay attention to them lovingly. Okay. But are you considering these boundaries? So in Menti, are you considering any of these boundaries? And then think about, is your child, are they interacting with the family or are they isolating themselves? How much time are they spending on their device? And your child in their best interest. Social media apps are everywhere and they are built to maximize user engagement, not necessarily ensure that their users are having a safe and healthy experience or connecting in safe and healthy ways. Technology companies are working to maximize how much time is spent on their devices. So it falls on our shoulders as parents to ensure that the time spent on their devices is well spent, but then also what are we as parents doing to model good digital citizenship? Are we spending all of our time and connecting with our cell phone or our smartphone instead of our children, right? So it looks like a lot of you here. So limit what apps can be used, turning in the phones at night, then putting in time restrictions and then placing filters on devices. I think that's interesting, this idea of filters. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Okay, wonderful. So next, I'd like to share this chart with you. And again, if you have your phone, take a picture of this. But this chart is some of the top programs that are now available for monitoring devices. There are many monitoring systems that allow parents to block content, track their child, review their messages, and limit screen time usage. But here's what you need to hear, parents, is that all phones are not the same as far as the right to monitor devices. So Apple and Android, okay, they have different privacy limitations. Apple has restrictions that don't allow parents to view text messages or monitor devices. And so it treats every user, no matter how they are, with adult privacy protections. So before buying a cell phone or even giving your old cell phone to your child, know what kind of monitoring you want to do. Androids are currently more monitoring friendly devices, and they allow parents more access to their child's content compared to the tight restrictions that Apple has. Okay. So one of the things too I saw recently, Bark actually has a Samsung, so an Android phone that is a Bark phone that comes equipped with all the things to monitor their children's phone, but it's also an app and a software you can use as well. So parents, if you know any more that maybe aren't on here in Menti, please share those with us. So do you know any that are working for you that weren't on that chart? So if you have any, please share them here. And if you find them, please share them with Tina. That way we could share this information with more parents as well. Okay. So what is having device awareness? Parents play such an important role in our children's life. We know that. Being aware of a child's habits and actions is just part of being a parent. A phone is no different, okay? And Dr. Skinner is going to explain more now.
Now, in this part, I want to talk about device awareness. It's really being aware of what's actually happening on the devices in our home. The concept here is intentional consumption. Now, really, we're talking about boundaries. As we look at our own screen time as parents, and we look at our children's screen time, which can be monitored, we begin to recognize how much time each day, each week is being spent on our devices. If we're going to have these devices in our lives, we want to be aware. As parents, we want to have intentional awareness of what's actually happening on the screens. And here are ideas that you can consider. Number one, discuss your family guidelines and why they are important. Think about it as a parent. Why are guidelines important? If your child is consuming something 7 to 9 hours a day, that's a lot of time. Contrast that with 2 hours or 3 hours a day. So intentionally focus on what are our family guidelines. Have a discussion. What are these guidelines going to be? And does it apply to the whole family? Now, some people say, yeah, but I'm working and they're doing school. Yes, I'm talking about non-education or work-related time. That's concept number one. Number two is hold regular discussions and follow-up. Right? Just because now they've got this device, are we never going to talk about it again? No. We're going to spend time talking about our devices, what's happening, how much time. We might actually have a powwow at the end of every week when you get your screen report that says you've spent this much time on these apps. So I would have regular conversations and let your children know we're going to be talking about this on a regular basis. Now, this takes time. It takes energy. But I want you to remember that behavioral monitoring is what leads to good outcome. Again, not control, but attention. We're giving them attention in a way that says, I care about this, and I care about us, and I care about you as my child.
Okay, so here are some of the 4 internet safety recommendations from a national expert. And I'd like you to rate them from 1 to 10 on the level of importance to you. Okay. So those 4 internet safety recommendations are being at least 13 to start any social media account. This is to know their friends personally, not friends of friends or friends of friends of friends of friends, right? Not having Wi-Fi connected devices in bedrooms, bathrooms, or behind closed doors, and have less than 200 social media friends. Okay. So what do y'all think? What is important to you? Someone says not having Wi-Fi connected devices in the bedrooms. Yeah. I remember, so I will tell you my age. I was when, Prodigy was our first internet provider and the dial-up. And I remember that huge home computer was right in the middle of the living room. So anytime anybody was on it, everybody knew what everybody was doing. And, I think the internet wasn't even really a thing then. So yeah, I think that it's important that we are make sure that, it's out in the open what we're doing, especially, when they're a tween or, even a teenager. So good. Okay, so now that we've discussed what the guidelines, let's turn our attention with Dr. Skinner to the how to have this crucial conversation with your child. And this is especially important if you are starting to have the conversation with your child about getting a cell phone. Let's listen.
I'm in 6th grade and my mom doesn't want me to have a phone.
I'm worried my daughter will grow up too fast if she has a phone.
Hi, I'm Dr. Kevin Skinner with Parent Guidance. I'm going to walk you through a sequence between a mother and a daughter. 6th grade daughter wants a cell phone. Mom has some concerns.
I'm worried I'm going to miss out on what my friends are saying. I won't know any of the inside jokes.
As we watch this sequence, we see a daughter who has some legitimate concerns. Mom, on the other hand, has some legitimate concerns too. You notice that in asking ourselves the question, what is their concern? We're trying to put ourselves in their shoes. These types of important questions are the ones that we have to step back and intentionally think through, because if we don't, they're using the phone with no guidance. And as parents today, the average child is getting a cell phone earlier and earlier, but are we doing it intentionally?
I don't want her to be contacted by people I don't know or approve of.
I won't be invited anywhere.
What if she finds content that isn't safe for her?
One of the best first steps we can take is try to understand what the other person is saying. If we say to our daughter, I'm afraid that you'll be exposed to content that I don't want you to see, or things that I don't think are appropriate. We need to educate them and help them understand, whether that's on their phone, a computer, on the television. We need to have a conversation so they have the opportunity to come to us, which is one of the more critical parts, is can we come to each other where they may be a difficult conversations?
I'll miss out on important group chats.
But if she doesn't have a phone, I won't be able to reach her in an emergency.
Yeah, if I don't have a phone, I won't be able to reach my mom in an emergency.
So,
what
do we do? What would you do?
So as we look at this, what do we do? Perhaps the most important thing is that we have an open dialogue about what it means. Even before a cell phone is given, what is the conversation about? Apps? What apps are we going to use or not allow? Or what amount of time are they going to spend? Where's the phone going to be in the evening or at nighttime? These important questions, if they're done properly, can be guidelines for how to protect our daughter in this situation. The next part that we really want to pay close attention to is they both are trying to express their concern. Do they have a good enough relationship that they can talk about what they want? Imagine with me, the mom says, no, you're not going to get a phone because I said so. In contrast, hey, I understand that you want the phone, that you don't want to be left out of the group, and I understand that you really want to be able to communicate with your friends. I want that for you too. And we just crossed a different bridge, and that bridge is the one of understanding and actually validating the child's concern. In conclusion, regardless of what you do as a parent, I strongly recommend that you seek to understand, that you communicate about what the concerns are, and then make a decision based upon what you agree upon and why you've come to that conclusion. That would be how I would solve this issue. I'm Dr. Kevin Skinner with this Parent Guidance Moment. Thank you for sharing this moment with me.
Behavioral monitoring is what leads to good outcomes, not control, but monitoring. So now let's turn to how to avoid being blindsided. Nobody likes to be blindsided, but we know that it will happen. We will be terrified and caught off guard by what our children could sometimes find on the internet or on these social apps. And there are definitely things you can do to be aware of the likely possibilities of what your child may stumble upon or even seek out online. So Dr. Skinner is going to explain how to avoid being blindsided.
Being blindsided means we have absolutely no idea that something could be happening. I know for a fact that 90% of adolescents are going to be exposed to pornography, for example. I know that many of them are going to experience being bullied. Many of them are going to feel lonely. Many of them are going to feel left out. Many of them are going to feel alone. That's just a reality. Can they come to me as a parent and can they talk about these experiences in an environment that I'm there for them? The way that we're going to avoid being blindsided is to be aware of the possibilities and then to educate our children on what those possibilities are. So we're going to monitor what's happening. I can't emphasize this enough. Are there limitations on when your computer or your internet is turned on and off? Can they access at any time? Is it being filtered, or is there a monitoring system that you know what's going on? If we're going to avoid being blindsided, we need to check those things regularly and have conversations with our children. So that's concept number one. Number two is invite a discussion. Now, let's role play this. So these are two parts. We're going to invite a discussion and then we're going to role play. What would you do in this situation to my son or daughter? What would you do in this situation? What if you got an email threatening you and they said, if you told anybody, we're going to hurt your family? Now, that may sound like, oh, that's not going to happen, but it's not uncommon for our children to have some kind of being bullied or being made fun of, being picked on, because as they engage in some of these devices, they might be a part of a group, they might be left out of a group, they might have whatever the experience is that makes them feel like they're not good enough. Can they come to us? So as parents, if we're going to avoid being blindsided, we should almost expect, what will you do? This is preparatory, what we would call a fire drill. What would you do in this situation? Would you come and talk to me? And how would we create a scenario? What would you do in this situation? And let them talk. And then we might guide them through it. Do you see how we're step by step preparing them for possibilities? So if it happens, and most likely when it happens, the only way we'll be blindsided is if we don't look ourselves. We can't put our head in the proverbial sand and hope that they just turn out okay. We need to make sure that we're not going to be blindsided by staying aware, involved, knowing what's happening, inviting the conversations, and role-playing with our children. What would you do in this situation? How did you handle this? And here's what I experienced. I had a similar experience, and sharing with them our experiences on these devices as well.
Monitoring includes open conversations with your child. It's not just a one and done conversation. We want to revisit this topic and revisit it often. So often that you know you're going to be checking in with them consistently. But let's dive deeper into monitoring. Do you know what content your children have on their devices? So to learn some facts, we're going to play a game in Menti, and you're going to want to play along. So get your phones ready. Again, if you need to go to menti.com, you can do that and then type in this code right up here at the top. Okay. And when we click on this, you're going to be assigned a character. And the first question is going to be a true false question. So let's move into here. And as everybody comes in, good, we have one player that's ready, the top hat. So give you a moment for everybody to join us. Give it just a few more seconds. Okay, top hat, it is me and you. So question 1 of 5. So you want to answer the fastest to get more points. A calculator app can hide images or files. What do you think? Is there such a thing as a calculator app that can hide images or files? And top hat, you said true. That is absolutely correct. Kids today are using the disguise of other apps. So there is one particular app, it looks like it's a calculator, but it's actually hiding secret pictures or files. The best way to figure out if this is on your child's phone is by going to the app memory size in your phone's settings. If it's greater than 30 MBs, then it's large and it may contain hidden content. Okay, so, you know, I always think our kids are getting so smart, and these app makers, you know, software makers are getting, you know, smart as well to help kids do this. Okay, so next question. Again, oh, we've got 2 players, or no, this is question 2 of 5. Okay, top hat's in. Do any of you want to come in and join us in Menti? Okay. So the next question is true or false? Cyberbullying peaks at ages 14 to 15 years old. What do you think? Cyberbullying peaks at ages 14 to 15 years old. Wait, is that true or false? What do you think? And that is true, okay? Between the ages of 12 and 15, cyberbullying is the most prevalent, but it peaks at 14 to 15. So this is that 8th, 9th, 7th, 8th, 9th period, and even more specifically in girls. But we know that no student is safe from bullying, whether it's at school or online. A peer can pick out anything about anyone and use that to make them feel different or less than, to isolate, alienate, bully them. And often parents and caregivers were unaware that this is going on behind the scenes. Okay. And then Dr. Skinner talked about this in the last video, but the next question, give it just a second to load. Okay, so the next question is, what percentage of adolescents will be exposed to pornography? So what percentage of adolescents will be exposed to pornography? And is it less than 50%, 50 to 70, 75 to 85, or is it 90% or more? Okay, the answer is 90% or more. In fact, they've done some research that if you have given a child a phone, and even children who don't have phones, but their peers do, by the 3rd grade, they have seen suicide and they've also been exposed to pornography. Okay, 10% of teens admit to daily viewing. Okay, and it's important, this is so hard, but it's important to talk about these uncomfortable topics with our children. And we want to create these what if scenarios so you can help your child know, that when these hard conversations come up, we are going to prepare ourselves and we're going to practice what we may say or do. And we know it may be uncomfortable for both of us, but we need to practice these scenarios also so we don't get blindsided. Okay. So now let's take a look at some different apps, and we're going to dive into Instagram first. So some parents are super familiar with media apps and some aren't, and that's okay. But here are some things that people think about Instagram. They may think that their child only has one account. They may think, oh, I follow my child, so I see everything that they post. Or as a parent or caregiver, you may be like, well, I know how many people follow my child on social media. Okay. The reality is that kids often have more than one Instagram account, or sometimes any of the apps. They have more than one account. In fact, Instagram encourages users to have multiple accounts depending on who their audience is. Parents may have access to the Instagram that is warm and fuzzy, but your child may also have, that could be the Finsta account, their fake Instagram, but their real Instagram for their friends is one that you don't know about. Okay, so if you ever see Finsta, Finsta, that's what that is. It's important to know that users can control who sees their content, and kids can easily hide content from their parents. So users can block anyone that they don't want seeing their content. So you may not seeing what they're actually posting. Users can mute any friends that they that they need to stay connected with, but they don't want to see their content. And it is important to know how many followers your kids have across their accounts. And Instagram does allow for some reports on the back end, so you can know how much time they're spending on it. And that might be something to look at together as you set usage goals. So that's Instagram, but now let's move on to TikTok. Okay. TikTok was the #1 app used last year. And in 6 years, the app, once it was just a silly kind of, we're going to make dance videos, but now it's one of the most prominent and discussed forces on the internet. And one recent study found, okay, this is eye-opening. One recent study found that Gen Z users are increasingly turning to TikTok instead of Google as a search engine. So if they want to know about Abraham Lincoln or, World War I, they're searching in TikTok, not Google. So I thought that was fascinating. And there's also in TikTok, there's a 13 and under group. And so parents think, oh, well, they're safe there, but nobody really monitors that. Okay. Nobody's monitoring it. So it's one of those things that, it's really not doing anything having them on the 13 and under group. And then furthermore, most teens or most users spend 105 minutes a day on TikTok, and some even more. In June of 2022, the app started sending teenagers a reminder saying that they need to take a break after 100 minutes. And I will confess, parents, I have TikTok, and I have you get sucked into this vortex and you just scroll. So I've gotten and seen those reminders if you've been on there for too long. So I appreciate that. But still, I'm always amazed that how you can get pulled into that. And TikTok, what it does is it learns what users like to watch and then gives them more similar videos customized to their viewing patterns. And it can even tell if you even just pause for a second on a video. So think about how engaging something has to be to draw our attention for over an hour and a half of just constant scrolling. So just know the facts about TikTok is it is the #1 app, and people are using it as a search engine. And we've really got to be aware of how much time our kids are spending on that. And then next is Snapchat. So Snapchat is the app that's designed to have images and messages disappear immediately, but settings, depending on what kind of phone you have, they can be changed to save those photos up to 24 hours in settings. On an Android, the content can actually be retrieved up to 30 days by going into the cache folder on the device. And also users can text or message others through Snapchat. So private does not mean safe from harm. You do have to approve who your friends are on Snapchat, but Snapchat also has private stories and public stories. So again, this whole thing is I can control who sees my private stuff or the stuff I want my friends to see versus what I want my parents to see. But here's the most important thing for me when it came to Snapchat is that there's a map feature on there, and it will show you if that map feature is turned on, it will show you when you expand out on it, like a Google map almost of where your house is and where that kid is. So it shows the exact location of the user. You may want to check if you have Snapchat or your child has Snapchat, that you have turned this feature off. Okay. It's not safe for people to know, except you, where your child is at all times. Okay. And then let's move on to Discord. So Discord is a popular way for kids to chat with other friends who are playing Fortnite or Minecraft or Among Us. Okay. It's like a hybrid of a chat room or Skype, so video, and you have to be invited to join a server. But here's what you need to know about that. Users can chat with each other on Discord via text or voice. Now that's good because your kids can communicate with their real life friends or their cousins or, their dad who lives somewhere else, and they can play games together. But it could be bad because a predator can stalk children or strike up a friendship with them by chatting with them on this kid-friendly channel. And then they say, let's take this conversation to direct message, right? And those aren't moderated. Another feature is that, you do have to be invited to join Discord. That's good because teens can use Discord to avoid unknown individuals. But this is bad because a single user can join up to 100 servers with up to 500,000 members. So it just takes one of those users on one of those servers to let in a bad guy, right? In fact, the National Center on Sexual Exploitation named Discord on their 2021 Dirty Dozen list as a major contributor to the sexual exploitation of children. Okay. So with all these apps, parents, there are good and there is bad. And again, that's why we teach digital citizenship and we monitor. That way we can have these conversations and know what's going on. And then finally, the last thing I wanted to show you, and I had no idea this was a thing. Sometimes if you've put passwords on your kid's phone, they'll say, here, mom, type in your password, so they can get more time or whatever it is. But did you know about screen recording? So kids can screen record and capture a password that you enter in on a device so they know it for future use. So you're thinking, okay, they've handed me the phone, I'm typing it in, but they have pushed screen record before they've given it to you so they can know the password. Okay, so just know that that is on Apple and Android devices. So just be aware of that, parents. Sneaky, sneaky, right? So with all that, we have to expect challenges. Rewards come with challenges. Challenges come with having kids. But let's learn what kind of challenges we can expect as we give devices to our children, how to work through them, and how to, as we start to implement these boundaries and this monitoring, what can we expect? How can we troubleshoot?
If you're going to give your child a smartphone, if they're going to be consuming computer games or whatever, simply expect challenges. A few years ago, there was a researcher who actually did a very interesting study for all of us. He was put some monkeys in, they were in their cages, and he gave them Kool-Aid. And every day they just went and pushed on this button, got the Kool-Aid, drank the Kool-Aid, and then he took the Kool-Aid away. Whoo-wee! Those monkeys got angry. They would go over there and the anticipation of this sugary drink, when it was water, they started getting angry. The anticipation of the sugar and then not getting it, they got upset. Well, as a parent, when your child continually is consuming without guidelines or boundaries, when you try to remove that, you might likely going to get a temper tantrum. So what do? Well, you stick to your guns. You do it out of love and kindness. But even acknowledging, it seems like when I mention not having your phone or being on it so much, you get angry. That's not okay. I love you too much to let it control your life. And so I'm inviting you here really to have this open dialogue of conversation about these emotions, about what they're feeling. And you're going to expect challenges. If they're already consumed by it, they're spending time. We received a question here at Parent Guidance that I found very, very interesting. And the question had a lot to do with this teenager who couldn't sleep and was on her phone till 3 in the morning. It was calming her mind on her phone, on her phone, on her phone, on her phone, and wasn't sleeping. And I thought about, this phone is the coping mechanism. It's what's soothing the anxious mind. Mentally, that's what she thinks. But in reality, that phone, she doesn't know how to live with it. What I refer to as solitude deprivation, when you can't live without your device. As parents, we need to help them slowly move away from those habits or those patterns that have been created. So how do we do that? The first step that I want to talk about is being aware of it. Being aware that they might get angry, much like the monkeys. You might even share the monkey story with them or have them watch this video series with you. But if they're feeling that emotional need to do that, just ask them to take it away for a day. Ask them to feel what it's like not having the device and the emotions that they have when they aren't on it. So give them an experiment. What happens when that phone or device is not around? What would you pick up? What would you do if you didn't have it? So think about this just for a minute. How much time do you pick up your phone each day? Now let's remove it. Let's take ourselves away from it for a period of time. Even if it's a half a day, try this experiment with your children. Just try it, test it. And then ask yourself this question. Can we use our devices in moderation? or not? Can we live intentionally or not?
Okay, so do any of you have those crazy monkeys in your household when you take away their devices? If so, maybe it's time to set some boundaries. And I am talking to myself here too, just so everybody knows. So write down this plan if it helps you, or take a picture. So to overcome device addiction, we need to make a plan. We're going to monitor use as a family. We're going to create a check-in policy. So we're going to remove devices from bedrooms at night, or maybe we check them in at a certain time. Establish screen-free zones. So, during dinner, we're not going to have them. During homework, or not maybe homework, but family time, we're not going to have them. Set those for you. And then as parents, caregivers, we have to model, right, healthy boundaries, and we have to practice what we preach, which is so hard. So now I want to give you a short walk through parentguidance.org and some of the resources, and explain more about the resources you can access. So right here, when you click here, this is where you can go to learn more about that parenting with a purpose. This is what the courses look like. So when you do, you'll want to get free access. So you'll need to log in and create your own profile. Okay. And again, this website is made available at no cost to schools, so that all the parents have this trusted resource. So this is what a course will look like. Okay. And this is that parenting with a purpose for effective parenting that we started with, at the first. But then I wanted to show you this Ask a Therapist section. And it's wonderful because if you have questions that you want answers to right now, these are commonly asked questions. So you can go through and see if your question has been asked or there's something similar. There's 4 pages of that. And just know that if you don't see your particular question, you could submit a question right here on this speech bubble. And the parentguidance.org faculty will look at it and perhaps create a video response. So I like that feature. But my favorite are those courses. And that's because your family could be going through something, different at any time, lots of different things. So there is a library by topic. So when you scroll all the way down, are you dealing with anger? Are you dealing with shame, or maybe suicide prevention, or even self-harm? So whatever you're going through, you and your family, or you and your child, there's a course here that you can visit. But I also love, and this is so important, parents, is there are these videos on your child's emotional development by age. Okay, so that's always a good place to start, because what we know about kids is, their prefrontal cortexes aren't all the way developed. So where are they in their emotional development? What can I expect? Okay. So moving on, just like the monkeys, okay, let's go back here and open this up. Here we go. So just like those monkeys, if you give your child something that they love and learn to depend on, and then suddenly remove it or monitor it closely, you're going to get some major pushback. So let's review a little bit about what we've learned today.
So remember, we've talked about understanding our children's most basic needs. Are they getting nurtured? Are we having eye contact? Do they hear a tone of voice that's connecting and warm? Do they see facial expressions that are inviting? So concept number 1, make sure that we are connecting in helping meet our children's most basic needs. Number 2, we've talked about monitoring, and it matters. If we aren't monitoring, then we're giving what we would call a permissive parenting, letting our children just do whatever they want to do. If we're going to be effective, we want to monitor, not control, but monitor. The next part is that we want to observe. As parents, we're observing, we're setting guidelines, boundaries, observing family rules, and having family rules. As a family, you can come up with your family rules around screen time. around how you spend your time. Are we going to have phones at the dinner table or not? Are we going to have conversations in the morning, or are we going to sit and look at our devices? Observe the patterns, set the patterns that you want, and live by them. And finally, I want to talk about playing a game. Now, a lot of people say, well, what do you mean by that? Well, the research shows that when we play games, when we have fun, it's actually much more effective. So let's play a game. Let's play a game with the phone, the smartphone. And here's how you're going to play the game. Take it away. Just take it away for a day, and instead of being with your phone, do something else. Play a game. Go for a walk. Go for a hike without your devices. And at the end of the day, come back and talk about the experience. The point is this: observe what life is like without the smart devices. Observe what happens in the interactions, the conversations, the emotional mood. And what you'll discover, and what your children may discover, is that our moods actually improve the less time we spend on our phones and the more boundaries we have related to it. Now, there's one final part that I want to teach today that actually is not related, and yet it is related to today's topic. Thich Nhat Hanh referred to a concept called deep listening. Now, deep listening is when we are really attuned to another person. We are aware of them. We're involved with them in whatever their journey is. The sorrows, the excitement, the happy, the sad. And so here's what he said: the most precious gift you can give to those you love is your true presence. And I can tell you, as a professional therapist, the best parental advice I can give you is stay connected. Have a meaningful conversation. That's what your children will remember when you're gone. So Thich Nhat Hanh also said, if we love someone, we should train in being able to listen. By listening with calm and understanding, we can ease the suffering of another person. If your child is anxious, if your child is depressed, spend some time listening. Feel their pain, feel their suffering, feel their hurt. That connection is what's going to help them, and you'll be much more effective in helping them with their device management if you can do the basic need connection that we're talking about here. This will be one of the most helpful things that you will do to meet their most basic needs. So when it comes to helping them understand how to use their cell phones, their smartphones, their screen time, your connection with them will help you have a bigger influence on how they consume. My invitation is to stay involved, stay engaged, and be aware. Thank you for spending time with me in this course. May you and your child be blessed with wisdom as you learn deep listening skills. Thank you very much.
Okay, so we've learned so much tonight from Dr. Skinner as well as from one another, and I hope that you leave tonight's session feeling more empowered to help protect your child. And we always want to hear from you at the end. If you'd like to share, what are some of the things that you'll remember from tonight's conversation? Is there something that you had no clue about? We're always trying to make these webinars better. So if you have any feedback, we would love to hear that. And of course, you can let Tina know as well. And now that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to turn it back over to you, Tina. And yeah, this is our last session for the school year. Thank you so much for everything. And just like the vaping one, this one, my eyes get this big as well, right?
Yes, yes. It's
Shoot.
definitely eye-opening. I think us as parents, we know, or we've, I guess, heard of things, but we don't really dive into it
Yeah,
like you were able to.
Oh, maybe it's not that way.
Right. And then it shocks us when we do hear like, oh my goodness. I think I remember back I know my daughter was very young, maybe in elementary school, and I had to have a conversation with her about, I think they called it blue whale, and I don't even know if you remember hearing about that.
I know what you're talking about. Yes. And they were
And
like telling people to kill themselves or something. Is that what yes.
Yep. And if you didn't do all of the challenges that they would find your family and they would kill your family. So, even that, for her to be that young and to think that she graduates high school tomorrow, like that and it's becoming more and more and more, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it was definitely needed for you to have this session to bring some things to light for parents to really open up their eyes and open up our eyes, really, because I'm a mom too.
Well,
Who wasn't really
congratulations
home.
to you and your
Thank
daughter
you. Thank you.
and
And congratulations to
everybody.
you too. I just had a 5th grader graduate yesterday. And so I told the principal, I was like, this is way too much for me in 1 week. Like, oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
Yeah.
So congratulations to you
Thank
and
you.
your daughter as well.
Thank you.
On to bigger and better things.
Yes, we're on to the 7th grade.
Yes.
So I appreciate y'all so much. I hope that you have a wonderful summer and we can't wait to see you back next year.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much.
All
And
right.
I will go ahead and close us out because we won't we'll join back the first Thursday of the new school year. So I just want to say thank you all for joining us every Thursday night from 6 to 7 and giving us a moment of your time so that you could receive some helpful information. And I hope that every Thursday that you joined in was just that, or when you logged in after, you got some great takeaways. So thank you again. I'm definitely here all summer, so I'll still be working in my office. So if anyone needs to reach out to the Parent Academy, you can definitely use that Parent Academy email address, and I will definitely get back with you. So thank you again. And you guys have a wonderful night and a safe summer.
Right. Good night, everyone.
Good night.